we've been getting a lot of requests for additional learning opportunities. And to address this, we have now developed an online comprehensive wild turkey management training. We teamed up with scientists across many institutions whose expertise is in population and habitat management for wild turkeys, and we wanted to provide that to you in a form that you can take wherever you are and at your own pace. So if you're interested in the training, make sure to sign up. We have it linked below. All of the proceeds of this is going to go back into wild turkey research and communication efforts so that we can bring more great information like this to you. So thanks for all the support. We really appreciate everything, and I hope you enjoy the training. Please help us share it with anybody you think might be interested.
Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Goolsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science.
Talk about bait and decoys in the same episode. Why not? Why don't we just throw predators in for good measure?
Oh, man.
Oh, and season dates. How could I forget about that one?
Yeah, how can we integrate those topics? Well, we've been getting asked about this particular topic, and we've been kind of avoiding it, not because we avoid conflict. I think we've proven that we're willing to go after whatever topic is relevant, despite the criticisms that we might get from some perspectives.
Yeah.
On a topic, because when you do a controversy one, no matter where you are on that controversy, somebody's not going to like it. But this one, we wanted to focus on decoys, and the reason we've been avoiding it is because there's not very much data published.
No.
And we both have pending data on it.
Well, I'll also say to our credit that we did kind of try to get into this last year. And we ended up, interviewing a couple of guys that work on sexual selection and animal behavior type topics, and that have even published some papers on those topics relative to turkeys before. And they were able to give us some insight into, the visual cues and, what birds are selecting for and why they do what they do and stuff like that. But it still didn't fully answer that question. And and like you said, we don't have much data on it, so we're not going to fully answer this question today either. But now as everybody turns it off, right?
But we do have some data that we're going to release today.
But those episodes gave some interesting insight. I don't know what numbers they were. They were with Jeff Hill and Dr. Buckholtz. Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted me to say it or not.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I almost said it and I stopped myself.
Yeah, we had one episode with Dr. Hill and one episode with Dr. Buckholtz last year. If you want to go back and listen to those, that's where we really talked about the breeding system and what visual cues, particularly with Buckholtz, I think it was, what visual cues hens were, paying attention to, and then we were kind of trying to use that to make some inferences about decoys.
Right. And we got into with Buckholtz sexual selection and like what is the hen actually cueing in on when she's selecting from different traits on males, which seem to be pretty much the snood.
Yeah.
Obviously the other characteristics have to be important. They wouldn't be so elaborate, most likely, if not.
Right.
But yeah, I was kind of surprised. I think we even called that episode something about bigger the snood, bigger the brood.
Yeah, that was it.
Classic. Yeah, so we can link those in the show notes if you want to go back to those. I think that was a good place to start. But, look, I thought today we should go a little more direct at it.
We can try.
So we're getting more questions about decoys, and people are, I think, concerned about decoy use and some of the practices, and people are definitely concerned about turkey populations. So I think it's a relevant topic that we should tackle.
Hmm. Yeah, especially given the conversation that we had earlier off the air about my hunt this morning.
Yeah. Well, do you want to give a short synopsis of your hunt?
Yeah, that might be nice for leading us and kind of kicking off our topic. But basically, long story short, I ended up with a hunting with a friend this morning, and we ended up on a bird that was out in the middle of a big field. And
Mm-hmm.
classic situation. He was out there. He was definitely an adult bird. Looked like he was at least 3. Had 9-10 inch beard, and good sized spurs. Looking at him through the binoculars, but it was a typical situation where over the amount of time we were with him for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. Um, he ranged in distance from probably like 150 to like 75, 80 yards. Most of that time he strutted in like a 3-foot square in the middle of the field. I mean, everybody that's an avid turkey hunter knows this turkey, right? And this
Yeah.
this this
He's
story.
untouchable
Yeah. But
unless.
that one of those times that he was, right around 100 yards, we had a clear line of sight to him, and we were hiding behind a log on the edge of the field. And I was doing some calling, and I got him super fired up. He was double gobbling and everything. And um, I told Andrew that I was hunting with, I was like, I guarantee you, if we popped a fan out from behind this log right now, he'd be right over here because
Yeah.
all the key ingredients were there. His hens had left the field. He was
Yeah.
fired up. He was gobbling
Mhm.
hard. We were right there. Could have easily seen him. I could have gotten the sun to reflect off the feathers. I think it would have been a done deal. I mean, I
Maybe.
can't know that
Yeah.
for sure, but it certainly.
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
kill him, but I think having one would have increased my odds.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've dealt with plenty of those birds. I was telling you, I went with our coordinator, who I think we're going to have on pretty soon to talk about a really interesting topic. Jules Ofault with FWC. Her and I were hunting together, and very similar situation. I've been on a bird in the same place.
Mhm.
So I don't know that it's the same one necessarily, but uh, I've got a place that I'm going where there's consistently a bird roosting. He's flying down into an open field with a bunch of hens, and he's doing a little something different every day. And I've been in there multiple times, including with Jules yesterday, and like we just can't get inside shotgun range on him.
Mhm.
He'll answer you, but he's got some hens. He's just strutting out in the field, a really big field in this case, and he's untouchable
Yeah.
without doing something dramatic.
Even in the woods too, like I had a bird last week. I was hunting with a different friend in South Carolina, and we had a bird that was probably 60, 70 yards from us, just over a little hill. He was over
Mhm.
there gobbling, and we couldn't get him to come over the hill. And I guarantee you, like if I had crawled to the top of that hill behind a fan, I could have shot him.
Yeah.
Illegal in both states, by the way. But
Mhm.
I'm just, thought experiment here.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting that you should bring that up. So we're talking about the practice of raping right now,
Yeah,
which has been really,
feigning or reaping. Yeah,
yeah, which I think specifically reaping is the thing that has been made illegal, at least to some degree in some states.
yeah.
Is fanning included in those? Do you know?
The thing is I've never heard. I think probably it would be useful for us to define what at least we're meaning by those. I don't know
Yeah,
what other people necessarily mean or if they'll agree with this, but when I think of fanning, I just think of those situations that I just described where I talking about, showing a turkey a fan.
yeah,
But I think of reaping is when you actually start crawling behind the fan. I
yeah.
don't know if that's right, but
That's how I would define it, and I've seen it defined that way. And in some of the reports that I looked at for this in preparation for this
yeah.
episode, that's the way they were defining it.
I don't know how many states have restrictions on that practice now. I do know that Alabama and South Carolina do.
So as of 2024, 7 states have to at least some extent banned reaping,
Only
which I think
7?
most of those define reaping pretty specifically to crawling behind a fanned decoy. So I don't think that's always the case. If we've got folks listening from all those states, which I'm gonna list in just a minute. If you know different than what we're saying, I'm not specifically familiar with every single state's regulations. So just leave us a comment so folks can see, what it is in your state. But that's Alabama. What'd you say? Alabama and South Carolina. Those are 2 of them. Tennessee is another one. Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Michigan.
Okay. Gosh, I'm surprised it's not more than that.
Yeah, it could be more, but that's what we were able to uncover.
So I also, the other day, I had a few minutes and I didn't get through it all the way, but I started trying to go through the process of looking state by state at their decoy regs to prep for this. And I made it through a number of states all the way up to, I think I was going alphabetically. I made it all the way up to like North Dakota or somewhere in that, around the ends and the M's or N's in the alphabet. And I was surprised at how few states restrict decoys in general, not just fanning and reaping, but decoys in general. Most every state that I came across does not restrict decoy use in any way during turkey season.
So they just allow you
It just
to do
says
whatever you
decoys are
want.
legal. Yeah, there's no specific restrictions.
Is that to include mechanical decoy?
It didn't say anything in that. I did find a few that did say, and I do remember South Carolina being one of these, that no parts from a formerly living bird can be incorporated into the decoy. So that would make it illegal to take a fan and put it on a decoy, right, from a bird that you harvested
And that was
previously.
that's in South Carolina?
That's South Carolina.
Yeah.
But
in
most
Florida,
states, I didn't see any mention of mechanical or any of that stuff.
Yeah, I think in Florida, the different practices that we've discussed, the fanning, reaping, use of decoys is legal, but not mechanical decoys. I believe is the case. So
and then Alabama has a thing. It's like no decoy that can be moved by. I think it's like either a person or a mechanical means or something like that.
Yeah, I got you.
But Alabama also has an interesting reg where they ban all decoys for the first 10 days of the season.
Yeah, I was just about to ask.
I don't know
of
any other states that do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And Alabama, I mean, just in general, has an interesting history with decoy regulations. I believe that they were not even legalized until the early 2000s. I think it was around 05, 06 that they were first made legal in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was that late. I can remember I grew up hunting in Alabama primarily, and it was not legal for a lot of my hunting.
Yeah.
Before I was out of the house.
Yeah, it was 2005. I just looked it up.
Okay. So I can remember it becoming legal. That was a little later than I thought it was, but I remember thinking, "Oh, I can get a decoy." Wait. Yeah. I think a hen decoy came first, and then it was allowed to get a fan decoy.
Okay.
Is that right?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because I feel like as a teenager, I had a hen decoy, like a bobblehead, one of those feeding hens.
When that became legal, did you just feel like you were just going to be able to
slaughter them?
Yeah, just fill your tags opening weekend every year?
Well, I thought I might kill one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the first interaction I saw with that decoy kind of turned me off to him, to be honest with you.
Of course, it was probably one of those crappy old foam decoys.
No, it was plastic, and
it
was 2 pieces. Some folks probably remember this, and it was like made by Flambeau or something from Walmart.
Yeah. I had the one that was the foam one, and that hen looked so rough, man. Like she stayed
Yeah.
folded up in my vest all because you could fold the foam,
Yeah.
and
Mine
it's
didn't
like
even have paint on one side of its head, you know.
I remember I'd get out there and set that thing up, and I'd be like trying to work the creases out of the sides of it where it'd been folded up in my vest. Like
Yeah.
she's got this huge caved in side. It's like Gobbler's gonna have to be really hard up to go after her.
Yeah. Well, I can remember I was like, man, I got to set it up so the side that doesn't have any paint on it isn't facing the. Well, I can remember getting it, and when you would set it up, it was like a little bobblehead where the hen head
Yeah.
looked like she was feeding,
Oh,
and
you
when the
had a
wind
fancy
blew,
one. You must have got your allowance that week.
yeah. Well, I can remember my dad being like, "That does look pretty good, doesn't it?" It did before the paint stripped off of it. But yeah, I can remember that change, and I think Mississippi's was open before that, and I had friends. I lived right on the Mississippi line, so I
Mhm.
had friends in school that hunted in Mississippi, and I was primarily Alabama. And I can remember thinking about that, not understanding why the regulations were different, and being envious. And then I started using one, and I was like, well, that doesn't help. You know?
What was your first
So,
experience with that? Did you have a bird run off when he saw it, or?
I don't know if it was because of the decoy or not, but I had a bird come in and he kind of stood up and putted
Mhm.
and left. He didn't run, but he didn't like what he saw.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience, and I was just like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And that was probably the first year that they were legal.
Yeah. I've never hunted behind any of the newer decoys, like any of the nicer Avian X or Dave Smith or any of those. So I mean, that's context for this conversation is I really haven't hunted behind decoys regularly in years. So
Yeah.
I,
Well, the only time I think I've already told you this, but because of some of my early experiences with them, I didn't really have many positive,
mhm.
like where I was like, man, the decoy helped there. And that was mainly younger in my hunting career. Uh, the only times I hunt on decoys is when I'm with somebody as a guest.
Yeah.
And I've only harvested one turkey associated with decoys. I don't care if people want to use them or not. You a lot of people are going to get mad at us like we're telling them not to do it. I don't care
Yeah.
what you do.
Right.
And some people swear by them and have a lot of success, especially the hyper realistic ones,
Yeah.
the ones that that I killed the bird on. I saw the positive response in that case. We wouldn't have. I don't think we would have gotten that bird.
Yeah.
It was raining and we were in the field, and that's why I was in the blind with one of my buddies, and he hunts that way more often. Uh, and it was raining, so we were gonna run and gun, and we didn't want to get wet, so we got in the blind and put this set of decoys out
Mhm.
that were hyper realistic decoys, and a bird came out a couple hundred yards away and strutted all the way to us.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's the only time I've had a positive experience with them.
Yeah.
And uh, I also, especially I like to run and gun a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's what I got into. That's what I love about turkey hunting. I love that part of the hunt, and I get whipped constantly, and I appreciate that the bird did that, and I
I
don't
am
want
better
to
able
like.
to appreciate that the older I get. It was very difficult when I was younger.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely
Um,
have grown to appreciate it more. But the other thing with the decoys is, man, I just don't want to carry them around.
well, that's the thing, and I'm to be fully transparent, I don't want to run the risk of trying to act or sound better than now. I mean, I did buy a Avian X. I said I've never really
Yeah.
hunted behind those new decoys, but I did buy an Avian X. I don't know, it was like 6, 7 years ago, maybe.
Yep.
But most of the time, I'd leave it out of my vest because it was so bulky, and it was just a single hen, like a feeding
Mm-hmm.
hen, just like a confidence decoy
Yep.
kind of thing.
I have
Most
a hen and a jay.
Most of the time, I'd leave it out of my vest. Every now and then, I'd set it up. Never called in and killed a bird over it. And it was like a season or two, I think, before Alabama banned it during the first 10 days. And when that first when that first 10-day ban was implemented, I obviously took it out of my vest to start that season, and I just never put it back in. I haven't
Yeah.
really, I haven't carried one since. So
Well, they clearly can be effective. I mean, a lot
yeah,
of people hunt primarily that way, and a lot of people hunt with a lot of success over decoys.
yeah. But I'm kind of the
So,
same way as you. Like, call it pride or call it ego, but when I kill a bird, I want to know that I killed that bird because I convinced that bird with my calling
mhm.
and my woodsmanship, to
Yeah,
come into shotgun range.
I like that too.
And I think it's like a pride ego thing, and I guess maybe that's okay, but I
Well,
just I want more
everybody
credit.
has their own flavor of this, right?
Yeah, and it's
Like
not to
everybody
say that
has their way that they like to do things, and
yeah,
I agree with you on that. And I've started this year for multiple reasons. I started hunting with a 410,
yeah,
and I've missed 2 opportunities because of that so
yeah,
far.
yeah,
Uh, but I'm still good with it. I've
yeah,
gotten to interact with several turkeys this year, and it was fun, and I
yeah.
enjoyed it,
I've been
and I don't
carrying my
have anything to
410
show
too.
for it.
I
Have you?
carried it this morning, yeah, and I even thought about that too on that hunt this morning. That one time, he was at 75, 80 yards this morning in that field. A 12 gauge with TSS might have done that, according to what I've
Yeah,
heard from some people. But I've never
yeah,
tried that distance. But
yeah. I don't want to shoot that far
but
either.
that was just that's just another thought I had. And this relevant to this whole technology
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. Well,
And it kind of gets wrapped up in all this, right? It's like people
yeah,
talk about TSS, they talk about decoys, they talk about cellular cameras, kind of all in that same
yeah.
conversation about increasing harvest efficiency.
I think where it gets heated is people have the way that they like to do things and the way that they quote unquote think they should be done, and
Hmm.
then they get upset that other people want to do it a different way.
Yeah,
And you and I are trying to, like, we interact with people across the full gamut all the time, and if you're doing what's within your legal right, I don't really care what you do, but I
yeah.
still do things my way, and I'm happy to do that, and I'm not going to cast shade on others for their approach, but
Have several friends that are good people that hunt with decoys.
they're terrible.
At least I'll say that while I'm on the air, right?
Yeah, you're not going to say their names or give their addresses or cell phone numbers. Well, I know this is going to get heated, and I'm sure our comment section is running rampant right now.
Well, so
But
the ethics are one
yeah,
consideration and the
one that
legality and all that, but then the other side and what we want to address is the biology, right?
yeah, well, and I thought, yeah, that's the point of this episode. Isn't about ethics. Everybody has their own ethic, and you can do whatever is within your legal right, and that's your business. But I thought it would be a good place for us to start with how has this thing transitioned in terms of the adoption of using decoys?
Mhm.
What I mean by that is if we go back to the 80s, 70s, wasn't legal in most places, and it probably wasn't much for decoys at that point
Yeah.
anyway. But that's changed over time where it's legal in most places. And you were saying, even based on your experience in the literature or in these websites, that most states don't have any restrictions, or a lot of
Mhm.
them don't. Uh, so
Most of them do
we,
say no live decoys. So we got
yeah,
that out of the way.
yeah. Oh, you can't train a hen to,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Can't
good.
bring your domestic hen out there,
Yeah.
Patricia, and set her up, tie
I
her
didn't
leg
even
out to a
consider
stake.
that.
Huh?
I didn't even consider doing that.
That used to be a big thing back in, like, the late 1800s, early 1900s.
No, I didn't.
Live decoys. Yeah. For duck hunting, especially. Yeah.
Oh, now I did know about it for ducks. I
Yeah.
thought you meant for turkeys.
Yeah, they did it for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they also needed to eat, you
That's
know.
true.
Uh, well, anyway, uh, we have been working on something that I thought would be interesting to share because you can't get it anywhere else except right here, right now.
Mhm.
It's not published yet, but one of my postdocs, Zach Steele, does human dimensions work. And for those of you that are in Florida, you probably got a survey from him here recently since he just sent one out. So we appreciate you taking time to fill that out if you haven't already. And you might get one from him in several other states, so just stay tuned. If you see Zach Steele, go ahead and take his survey. It's going to help us out. Anyway,
it's not a witness protection name or anything like that. It's not spam.
Well,
You
it is
see an
kind
email
of
from
funny.
Zach Steele. That's a solid name,
Yeah.
Zach Steele.
It is kind of funny because some people get mad whenever they get emails from rando
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And several people have gotten mad at him for sending out this survey.
Don't get mad at Zach. He's too nice for that.
Yeah. He's a really, really wonderful person.
He is.
So anyway, he went through all the literature and was trying to, the Turkey human dimensions literature, and was trying to quantify various things. But one of the things he looked at was trends in what proportion of the turkey hunting population are using decoys over time. So the data in terms of what he found, the first papers are right in the late 80s. Would you like to guess what proportion of the hunting community were using decoys at that time?
In the late 80s?
These were from specific states, and I just see points on the map, which we'll put them on YouTube so you can see this figure. I don't know what states those were, but it apparently was legal because it's not zero.
Less than 15%?
Looks like two of the 3 points I'd say are in that 15% range, and then one is probably about 30% based on these. So on average, probably in the low 20s.
Okay.
What about by the time you get to, let's say 2015, that the last data points are about 2020?
I would guess 40%.
On average, the last 3 points on average are about 75%.
What?
Yeah. About 75% of hunters are using decoys at least some of the time.
At least some of the time, not all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely not all the time. That's not.
And that's based on surveys of how many hunters?
Hunters in different states.
Hundreds.
So each data point. So if you're looking at this figure right now, each one of these data points is a study from a specific state, and there's 1 or 2 points that the survey was in multiple states, but it's usually one state.
Yeah.
That if you're looking, there's an outlier in the late 2010s, probably 2016ish. That outlier low is Mississippi. I had him look that up.
Interesting.
So in Mississippi, it was much lower. Which let me see his notes right here if he wrote that in.
Do you have any state-specific stats for Alabama?
The Alabama is represented in here, I think, but I don't know.
I wonder if Alabama is lower too, like on the lower end of the spectrum.
Let's see.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were regional trends in decoy use, you know?
Yeah. He said the recent outlier, he didn't tell me what the value is, but it looks like it's probably about 30% or a third. Something like that.
Okay.
So the other 3 points that were that late in time are up in around 75%, and then Mississippi's was about a third. Or using decoys sometimes.
That's a striking difference.
Yeah.
You think it's just cultural, just like tradition?
I don't know.
Or do you think it's like, I wonder
maybe
if
some of our Mississippi listeners can tell us why are you not using decoys?
I would guess it's cultural. Just most Mississippi turkey hunters aren't taught to hunt that way.
Yeah.
I also wonder if it would be interesting to see if there's trends that you could look at to see if rates of decoy use are correlated with landscape composition. And specifically, I would predict that states with more open landscapes probably have higher rates of decoy use.
That's an interesting thought.
I mean, we were talking about field birds this morning. Imagine if you're hunting, in an ag-dominated state in the Midwest, it's like all you have is field birds. I mean, they have to roost, obviously, but so you're going to be hunting them there. But
yeah, that's really interesting. Well, it's pretty striking from this graph. I know you can't see it right now, but if folks are watching us on YouTube, then you can see the graph. It's pretty striking relationship over from 1990 to 2020, it's, with a few exceptions, pretty linear relationship that was increasing
Mm-hmm.
from about 20%, 25% up to around 75%
Were
over
there any
that.
like big jumps at any point in time that you noticed, or was it just still just pretty steady, smooth
I would,
line?
s- I mean, it's hard because the data's kind of sparse, but
Yeah,
I'd say around 2000 is when you kind of see a jump, which is
gotcha.
when a lot of the regs were changed.
Yeah,
Like even the one you looked at from Alabama,
that was
which,
'05. Yeah,
yeah, I'm
'06.
wondering if that wasn't fans though. So anyway, I thought that would be interesting to share, and that was the first time that has been released. So it is in review right now in a publication, so it'll be out soon, hopefully. But we also have some relevant. So I just told you guys that we just sent out a survey in Florida, and I think we've gotten 700 responses or something. So really good
Mm-hmm.
sample size. And we asked hunters if they typically use decoys. So that's a little closer to what you were saying, like always.
Mm-hmm.
So do you use them most of the time when you go?
Mm-hmm.
And 55% of the respondents said that they did.
Yeah,
So it's a little over half.
yeah, that's higher than I'd expected it to be. Still,
Yeah, and that I think is all Florida hunters there.
okay.
We also asked them specifically, do they participate in reaping
Mm-hmm.
ever? I
Yeah.
guess, or no, no. Let me take that back. We asked them, do they typically? So is that their go-to? So
Mm-hmm.
what do you think that was?
With reaping,
Yeah,
I would say
like that's
no.
their go-to method.
I would say that would not be most people's go-to method.
That's right. What
Okay.
do you think the percentage is?
The percentage of people that reap as their go-to method, I would
Hmm.
think it would be like
Well, I don't know if it's their go-to, but they did say they typically use it.
they typically use they regularly use it.
Yeah, it
20%.
was 10,
Okay. I was
10%.
yeah, good.
However, there were people.
Well, I
I
said
think
good. I
Zach
don't
told
know.
me
I
this.
shouldn't say I shouldn't qualify it, I guess. If it's
I
good or bad.
Zach did not qualify this for me in the notes that he gave me,
Yeah.
but he did tell me, I'm pretty sure, that there were respondents that said that is their go-to method.
Yeah.
Like that's what they go when they go turkey hunting. They use that.
They drive around and look for field birds and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there, I believe he told me that there were some responses that said that.
Yeah.
So
So, does it matter biologically?
that's a great question.
Is it causing our declines? I would say no.
I mean, I would say that's most likely no, also.
If I had to guess. If I had to guess. And like you said during the intro, we don't have a lot of data on this, but we do have some.
Yeah.
And that's why I answered the way that I did. And specifically, we've shared this before, but I think it was a couple of years ago on here, so I'm sure a lot of you probably, haven't heard it or have forgotten about it. But South Carolina released some information from a survey of hunters that they conducted a couple years ago, and their respondents said that 23% of them used a strutter decoy. So this was specifically about strutters. And what I mean,
23% use the
yeah,
strutter. Okay.
23%. So about a fourth. Um, and interestingly, based on their self-reported success and all that in the survey, they had the same success rate as hunters that did not use strutter decoys. They killed the same number of turkeys, and hunters that used strutter decoys had the same catch per unit effort as those that did not. So basically, the same number of hours per turkey harvested.
So based on that, it sounded like they're not more successful because they're using decoys.
No. And then the other thing that makes me think that across the board, decoys probably do not increase harvest efficiency. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because I do believe that there are people that are very effective at using decoys. I
Mm-hmm.
think, it's just like calling, right? Like
Yeah.
there's varying degrees of skill. And
Yeah.
some people really know how to set up decoys to convince turkeys. And
And maybe they have a better set of decoys
right,
or.
right. But what I'm speaking here to is the average, right?
Yeah.
And so the other line of evidence that makes me believe that decoys aren't really propping up harvest rates to a point that where we should be concerned about it is the data that we've now seen from multiple states throughout the Southeast and even up into like the Mid South and beyond, is that the harvest rate of males is very, very consistent among states with very, very different regulations. Um,
So
so
it's always 30% of the males.
it does seem to be right around that number. So, I mean, you would think that in a state like Alabama, where decoys are banned for the first 10 days, that, and I mean, we could probably get data to look at some of this, see if, hunters on average in Alabama are more successful compared to hunters in states that can use decoys during those first 10 days, or even do the first 10 days compared to the second 10 days. Of course, you have, the season has progressed at that point, and there's all sorts of things that could influence that, but
Mm-hmm.
it would be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to mull this over. So there's another study that was in the last symposium. I don't think we've covered this one, have we?
We have not.
From Adam Butler. So we've had him on before. I actually messaged with him to make sure that I understood several things before I opened my mouth about it. But so it's Butler and Wong 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have that up in front of you? I know
I
you were looking at
do.
it too.
Yeah, I've got my notes on it pulled
Okay.
up. So the study was conducted in Mississippi 2015 to 2018. They observed over 600 hunters across more than 20,000 trips afield.
20,000
Yeah,
trips.
so they had 618 hunters record all of their hunts from 2015 to 2018. Or
That's pretty cool.
yeah. And so it's just some interesting stats to throw out there here at the beginning. The average harvest was 1.4 birds per season. The average age of their hunters was 49 years old with 25 years of turkey hunting experience. Here's another stat to add there. Oh, we already talked about Mississippi, didn't we? It's 35% of hunters always or frequently use decoys. And
Yeah, that's the data point that
yeah, and interestingly, 31%, they reported that 31% of hunters missed a turkey at least once during the study. So I'm glad to know that I'm in good company with a third of the 618 Mississippi hunters in that study.
Yeah.
That I've missed one in the past couple years.
That's funny. Our friends at Grounded Brand wanted to support us, and I know a lot of you out there want to support the podcast.
Yeah.
So if you're in that boat, go check out on their website. They have an option for you to donate directly to the podcast to help us out, help us keep bringing you content. And we really appreciate all the support, and we are really appreciative that, Grounded Brand stepped up to help us out as well.
Yeah, if you add something to your cart and you go to checkout, it's right over there on the right side of your screen. You're going to see options to do a $1, $5, $10 donation to Wild Turkey Science. They also have a other button if you want to do a specific amount, and they also have links for Turkeys for Tomorrow and NWTF there as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Shout out to Grounded Brand. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Well, those are interesting stats, but I guess the one that is most relevant to
Sure.
our discussion was, how did it affect success of the hunters?
Mhm.
Did decoy use affect success? And they didn't find a relationship either.
No, use of decoys did not improve hunter success.
So, that's interesting to me for a few reasons. One, the use of decoys has increased to where most people are using them, at least some. and maybe people are, I know that we're probably getting raked over the coals by now in the comments, but yeah, people
I'm sitting here
just be constructive. Okay, just be constructive. We know this is a controversial topic and it's inevitably going to cause controversy because of that. But I find it interesting that we've had the steep incline in the use of decoys, and then we've got these two studies, or what was there, three?
Well, there was South Carolina, there's
Yeah,
Mississippi, and then there's, the less direct evidence about,
yeah, the
consistent
harvest rate.
harvest rates
Yeah.
among regulations.
So I find that really interesting that all of them show that it's not increasing success in terms of how many hours are spent per bird harvested.
Especially when you go back to the beginning of this conversation and rehash, what we were talking about our hunts,
Yeah,
and how we believe that
both of us. Yeah,
some type of decoy device would have helped, would have aided
yeah.
in that.
Well, I think specifically in those cases, we thought a fan would help.
Yeah, true.
So,
But I think even in
which
my situation with the
I
field
know there's
turkey,
people in the comments arguing over this by now, but I don't care what you use. Like, if you're using I want you to be legal and whatever your state has deemed legal.
and
That's,
safe,
yeah,
I would add.
yeah. Well, I think we're trying to make sure that we're all being safe out there.
Yeah.
That's an important part of it. And honestly, I think a lot of the traction that states have gotten to, well, and I'll say mixed support at least, on banning, the reaping practices has stemmed from safety concerns.
Yeah, and you and I both have a close personal friend that was, injured in a decoy a fan incident
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah,
Yep.
very severely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's serious
So,
business.
yeah. So I can understand that point of view, and I can understand also the other point of view. So we're trying to stay objective.
So, one thing that was really interesting, and I know we're going to get back to decoys again, but, Butler and Wong also reported several other stats about hunter efficiency. Did you happen to review those?
I did.
So, do you remember the two main factors that drove hunter efficiency?
I do remember one of them.
Okay, what was that?
It was the age of the hunter.
Yes, hunter efficiency increased 2% per year with age.
And now, am I remembering this correctly? That wasn't related to the overall experience, though, right? Like how much experience the hunter had?
I don't remember if they adjusted for that, but I did write down that they hypothesized the reason for it was because older people have more time to hunt and they can be more selective when they do hunt. That was their
Hmm.
hypothesis, is basically saying, especially if you think about a retiree.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm retired right now, I'm hunting on all the prime days. And I'm not going to go out there and try to hunt. Like if I have if I'm 35 with a 9 to 5,
Yeah. If
I'm
it's,
going to go out and hunt that rainy Saturday. But I'm
well,
65 without a job. I'm not going to go hunt that rainy day. I'm going to go hunt the good goblin day.
that's a good point. I could see that. And I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've posted any of the content yet, but I was filming myself staying with that gobbler I was talking about. I
Yeah.
was with him and some hens, and I think I told you about it. It was pouring down rain, and I was out there with him for hours in the pouring down rain. And I was able to stay with them. They were out in the opening, but I
Mhm.
was able to stay with them for a long time because the cover of the rain was helping me kind of move and get in front of them
Sure.
over and over. And every time it thundered, he gobbled at it, and I just thought that was the so delightful.
Yeah.
Like I just sat there in the rain and enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But my granddaddy wouldn't have been out there in that rain. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the guy that I hunt with stayed hunt. He's a older gentleman that's been super supportive of me in my program, and he's got that access and is extending some of that to me, which I appreciate. But he stayed in bed
Mm-hmm.
because it was raining,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, well, it's not lightning, so I don't get that much opportunity. Like
You
I've
do
got
know
too
what
many
causes
things going
thunder, though,
on.
right, Marcus?
I do.
Because you did
I
say it
didn't
was
see any
thunder.
flashes.
You
I
did say
didn't.
it was goblin at the thunder.
He was gobbling at the
I just
thunder,
wanted to
but I
make sure.
never saw a flash. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stick it out.
I would have done the same
And
thing.
I got close to him multiple times,
Yeah.
but anyway, I could see that being a thing. It would be kind of remarkable in that kind of data set if that showed out. But you know, if you can hunt every day of the season, you don't go on the ones that are real marginal.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
was trying to reconcile it, but once you put it that way, it makes sense to me now.
Yeah. The other significant predictor of hunter success was turkey abundance, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that makes sense.
Well, and the way that they indexed that was the number of the percentage of hunts in which a male was heard and turkey observations adjusted by amount of time listened. So generally speaking, the more turkeys that were heard or observed, the greater the hunter success. That makes sense. The other thing, it also makes sense, but it's just neat to see it documented, is that success was lower on properties that received moderate hunting pressure as opposed to those that, or compared to those that had light hunting pressure.
Yep, that's interesting. There was another interesting factor in there. I don't know if you caught this one, but the miss, like what was predicting
Yeah.
if they missed. Did you
No, I
see
didn't
that?
see that.
Yeah, they I was trying to see, I think it's in table 3. Yeah, to miss a time in one of the seasons. Uh age was the only thing that mattered in that too. So I've heard that
Mm.
argument. Like I use decoys or some other
And the misses
thing to get.
increased with younger or higher for
Yeah,
younger
if
age
being
groups?
younger was more likely to be
Yeah,
a miss
right.
or have a miss.
Yeah,
So the older you got, the less likely you were to have a miss.
makes sense.
Which who knows what's driving that? Maybe it's the same thing. Like you don't take
I think it's
marginal
just older.
shots.
I think it's older hunters being more conservative with their
Yeah,
shot opportunities.
I think so. Probably.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get to hunt him tomorrow, don't take a
Well,
risky
I'm just
shot
thinking
today.
about how I know that I've changed my hunting style over the years, and I've definitely
Yeah.
become more conservative with the shots I take.
Yeah, and I've learned over time not to do things that are dumb.
Well, and I think that's probably why you do become conservative, is because you learn what, you screw so many things up. So you just
Yeah,
prune and prune and prune until
yeah.
you end up with a style that works for you.
I was mentoring a hunter this past weekend, and I told her that multiple times. I was like, I'm telling you all these things, but you're going to screw this up a lot.
Hmm.
And the thing is, you need to reflect on that and learn from it and try not to next time.
Yeah,
And it's like, but I can't teach you all those things. You're going to have to fall into the pothole,
that's right.
So we talked about that quite a bit.
And that's something, we never really get into this on this podcast, but I would encourage young hunters to do, like go out there but don't be afraid of messing up and try
Yeah,
different
don't.
things. Like
That's right.
if traditionally you call aggressively, try backing off of that. See how calling less aggressively works for you.
Yeah,
Or,
mix it
use a
up.
decoy, maybe try not. You usually stay further back from roosted birds, maybe get a little closer, stay a little bit. I mean, I have found that
Tinker.
having variety in the way that I approach birds helps me learn more.
Yeah. Well, I've also, especially now after we've been studying them for a while, and I'm getting to see the individual variation in data, even because I'm a really data driven person, obviously. But my experience in the field is that every turkey is its own individual, and they have different behaviors, and it even seems like the same one does something different every time. And seeing that in the data, like I tinker around with my approach a lot because I know that the individuals are different, and
That's a
they
good
might
point too.
respond to something different.
Yeah.
And I do that same thing. I've got a few really cool, uh, trumpet calls, that sound really different. I sound terrible on them, but I'm getting better. I've got different pot calls that sound different, like different hens. Like I mix up all kinds of things like that.
Hmm. So you play with some of those calls that you don't use as often now and then, just to see what kind of reaction you get.
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah.
I went out with. I think I had told. Yeah, I did in one of the episodes. I had that wingbone call from Lovett Williams that he made.
Hmm.
And I went out recently and used it and got a turkey to gobble it in. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, that was good enough.
If
It's
I were
good
you, it
enough
would
to get him to gobble.
100% be on my bucket list to kill one with that.
Oh, it is. In fact,
Maybe we'll kill one this weekend with it.
Well, you told me I need to leave it at home.
I did do that, didn't I?
So what that did was motivate
I'm so
me to
glad you
practice
brought
more.
that up on the air. I did. All of y'all that's been watching Marcus's trumpet and wingbone videos, I said, you leave that something at home this weekend.
Well, I've been so for those that haven't been following along, actually, I don't think we posted anything recently about this, but in the first day of February, I decided I'm going to learn how to use a wingbone and trumpet, and had basically never even tried to use one before. That wasn't a thing where I grew up. Like
No, I did.
I never.
Yeah, I played my first trumpet call like last year or the year before.
Yeah. So I just decided I'm going to learn how to do this before turkey season, and I'm definitely not good,
Yeah.
but I'm
You're
good
definitely not
enough.
good.
I'm good enough now that I feel confident enough to use it on a turkey.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that long that it took me
Yeah.
to get to that confidence, and I actually have a couple of different calls now. One I found in my vest that I don't know where I got it. So
That's the
I
one
think
you texted me about the other
I
day. Yeah.
texted you because I was like, "Hey, did you get a call?"
Hey, is this your trumpet call in my vest?
No, but it was a cane call, so it's unique. And
Yeah.
I had been looking at the cane ones because I really liked them.
It
And I
turns
didn't
out
realize
you had a free one in your vest.
Yeah, somebody already gave me one. So Lee Steed, for those of you that know that call maker, he's well known.
Yeah.
But I got that thing out, and I was like, okay, I sound like a hen with this thing, and I've gotten a gobble off of that one too.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's some of the fun of it for me. I like to explore and see what works and what doesn't, and it's a lot of fun. But talking about the bucket list, it is a bucket list thing for me to kill one with that wing bone now.
Yeah. I bet.
So, or watch him. I don't have to pull the trigger, but to beat him with that, I think that'd be pretty special.
So I'm looking forward to this weekend, and obviously our minds are more on turkey hunting than turkey science right now.
Well, man, I bet we got 100 comments right now just raking us over the coals.
Well, I just want to talk about. I mean, that's like all that's on my mind right now is hunting. So
yeah,
it's hard to get away from. But I mean, I don't know. Like, if you want to put a bow on this, I mean, I feel like it's something that the harvest efficiency relationship with decoys, I think, is something that we should continue to collect data on, and we should be knowledgeable about it.
Well, one thing that people are probably commenting on that we didn't discuss, I think one thing that could be in this data that we would not see is that decoys change which individuals are vulnerable.
That's true.
Especially the fans. And I think that's some of the concern, and it wouldn't have necessarily been captured with these methods that we've gone over. That bird that's out in the field that you and I are talking about is untouchable. Well, that might be the most vulnerable bird if with some of these practices. So
yeah, and so you and I debated on whether or not I was going to share this, but because I don't think I've shared it on here before, but our recently completed study, where we collected,
Wait, are you
hundreds.
going to share the results right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to briefly go into it. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but
Okay.
um, it did show that on average, birds killed using a decoy had basically higher sperm counts than birds that were killed without the use of a decoy. Um, but and that's what you would expect, right? Because we know that typically you do have a proportion of the population, that a relatively small proportion of the population, that does most of the breeding.
Mhm.
Like I think that we can agree that that's relatively well established. Um, and so it makes sense that the bird that approaches, especially like a hen decoy, or I mean, I guess a strutter for that matter, because he's trying to defend his right to breed a hen, is going to be the breeder. So you would presume that he would be more fertile. But all of the males all the adult males that we collected testes from were fertile, right? So it wasn't like we had,
They were all producing sperm.
yeah, they were all
Yeah.
producing sperm. And you add to that, not from our work, but from other people's work, it doesn't really seem like we're having a major problem with unfertilized eggs.
Hmm.
So I don't know how much that actually matters, that the birds killed over decoys are a bit more fertile.
Or they produce more sperm. We don't know if they're.
We
Yeah, I
don't.
think that's
Yeah,
the.
you're right. You're right. That's a good distinction. We don't know that they're more fertile. They do produce more sperm.
Yeah. So, but I think that's why we need the research on it to understand. Okay, that's an interesting observation. You've got a great sample size. The method's solid. You're working on publishing it right now, which is why we haven't covered it in detail. And I didn't think you were going to share it because of that either. But you gave a little tidbit. I guess it is already shared publicly
It
in that
is.
thesis.
Yeah. It's
So
been presented.
the
Yeah.
thesis is published and you've presented it in presentation form.
And this was a
So,
very coarse method of looking at how much sperm they produce. I mean, because all these
right.
birds were dead. So
But the question
basically,
is now, okay, you've seen that dichotomy. Does that matter?
right.
Because if it does, if every male could equally fertilize eggs, and we're not seeing infertile eggs in nests, which I don't think has been common in any study that I'm aware of, except for that the one study where there was a bunch of flooding
Hmm.
in Louisiana. I
Right.
don't think that infertile eggs have been very common in this. They're
No,
certainly not in our studies.
no. And, if there could also potentially be concern that we're removing genes from the population that confer higher sperm counts. Like, I could see why that might be cause for concern from a
Yeah.
biological perspective, but I also don't think that we are killing a high enough percentage of the birds to be able to artificially selectively remove that trait from the population.
Well, based on the folks that Buckholz and the other fellow we
Hill,
had on that does, yeah, Hill, that do that kind of work, they didn't think so either,
no,
and they said it on the air.
yeah. I think it's something that we should understand and be prudent with, but I don't think that decoys are causing the declines that we're seeing. I mean, we've talked about lots of reasons why we might be seeing the declines that we're seeing, and there are many much more plausible hypotheses out there than decoys.
Yeah, I think not having anywhere to brood and us not being able, like we we're down in the low 20s on average of a hen getting a poult to 28 days.
Yeah,
That's what success means in these
yeah,
studies. Like that, you know, I'd I'd say that's probably more related to the fact there isn't any brooding cover.
yeah.
That's just me. That seems like a more parsimonious explanation.
And on top of that, when you have several recent studies that have shown that half or maybe just a little bit more than that of the hens are surviving on an annual basis, I mean that's way more of a concern for me
Yeah.
than whether or not somebody's using a decoy.
Oh yeah. I want y'all to go out and enjoy your hunting experience and, keep being motivated to make more turkeys. Right? And if that includes you using decoys, then you be my guest.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I really don't care about that personally.
Agreed.
I want you to enjoy what you're doing, pass it to the next generation, and make sure that we have a resource to pass to them. That's what I'm motivated by.
I love it, man. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep. Okay, well, thanks for sticking with us. If you haven't already left us a comment down there, maybe you can address some of the ones where folks are getting mad at us. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to getting to do a little hunting with you.
Who had the bright idea of releasing a decoy episode right in the middle of turkey season?
Well, I think it was you, Will.
Yeah, we're going to have a good weekend, man. I'm so excited. We're kicking it off tomorrow. Maybe get an afternoon and 2 full days. West Alabama.
Yeah, gonna be good stuff.
Cool.
All
See
right,
y'all.
Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate all the support. Hope y'all are having a great turkey season.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.